I'd like to welcome everyone to this June 12th meeting of the Rockingham County School Board as we exit closed session. This is new for me, so give me just a second. I believe the first thing on the agenda, or the next thing on the agenda, because we've already been meeting in closed session, so that we don't have to do that at the end of the meeting tonight. But we need to certify closed meeting. So members, do I have a motion to certify closed meeting? Thank you, Mr. Falk. Do I have a second? Thank you, Dr. McQuilkin. Any discussion?
The motion for certification is to certify that the only thing we spoke about during the closed meeting was the reasons that we went into the closed meeting.
Yes. Thank you. Any further discussion? If not, and this requires a roll call vote, so I'll ask Ms. Gilkison to do a roll call vote for us.
Mr. Breeden, Mr. Falk, Chair Lohr,
Aye.
Dr. McQuilkin.
Aye.
Thank you. Now, if you can all please remove hats, stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. That's okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. If you'll please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is recognitions. And our first recognition is from the Virginia Soil and, the Shenandoah Valley Soil and Water Conservation District.
My name is Megan Trice. I'm the education coordinator for the Soil and Water Conservation District in Harrisonburg. For those of you that don't know, the Soil and Water District is a political subdivision of state government. We are tasked with helping people protect our soil and water, and part of that is education. So we have spent a lot of time this spring in schools, I will say a lot, in Harrisonburg City Schools, Rockingham County Public Schools this spring. A lot of teachers asked for our help, and we love getting out of our office to go help teach kids about our soil and water. In addition to all of the in-classroom stuff we do, we also give 2 Teacher of the Year awards annually, one for a K through 5th grade teacher and one for a 6th through 12th grade teacher. And both of the Teachers of the Year this year are from Rockingham County. So the K through 5th grade teacher is Miss, I don't want to mess up your first name, Carlene Lance from Lacey Springs Elementary School. She's actually the librarian. She does tons of work in the school garden and has incorporated tons of books into her library to teach kids about plants and nature and soil and water and all sorts of conservation. And then our K through 6th grade winner is Paris Black from J. Frank Hilliard Middle School. She's an ag teacher, and she, of course, incorporates tons of conservation into her agriculture classes. Probably my favorite is all of her soil science and soil conservation lessons. So I have some really awesome plaques for them. They've also been recognized at their schools with a certificate and a gift certificate for some education resources for their classroom. So.
Thank you, Megan, and thank you both for all of your efforts in your classrooms for conservation. My husband actually used to serve on the Shenandoah Valley Board, and it also encompasses, I'm not sure if you mentioned, it includes school districts Rockingham, Harrisonburg, and Page County. So way to go, Rockingham, and congratulations. Okay, next on the agenda, we are sadly having a school board member leave us, sadly for us. I know that he's off to greener pastures and quieter evenings, hopefully. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Scheichel for a presentation.
Mr. Breeden, we've talked many times over the last few months about the fact that your first year on the school board was in 1996. That was my first year of teaching here. You've done so much for this community. It's a better school division because of you. Our staff members, our administrators, our teachers, our families appreciate all the efforts, whether that's East Rockingham High School, RA, all the support for innovation, all the support for mental behavioral health, all the support just for staff and for a great education program. And so it is my honor tonight to present you with a plaque expressing sincere appreciation for outstanding and dedicated service to the students and staff of Rockingham County Public Schools. And let me just say, your years of service, 1996 to 2007, and then returning with even more energy from 2012 to 2023, and serving as the chair in 1999, 2003, 2007, 2012, 2013, 2018, and 2022. That's a career on the school board well spent, and I consider you a good friend, and it's truly been an honor to serve with you these last 6 years. Couldn't have done it without you, and I just want to express my appreciation and gratitude from the entire school division.
Mr. Breeden, would you like to make a few comments, or do you want to hold that for later?
I'll hold that for later. I may not get a standing ovation when I speak later.
Well, thank you.
Foreshadowing.
Thank you for all of your service, Mr. Breeden. Your dedication to our children is astounding. So thank you very much. We also have someone else leaving us. Well, I think we have a few people this is their last school board meeting. But most notably is Dr. Scheichel's last regular scheduled school board meeting with us. And we thought long and hard on what to get. Well, no, wait, I got you. And we've joked about the Oscars and our Oscar, but tonight we are presenting you Division Superintendent, Rockingham County Public Schools, 2017 to 2023, the Oscar for Outstanding Superintendent. So we're going to start with this one. But wait, there's more, there's more. Since this is a small token, and Oscar seems to be bigger than life. Jumping out of airplanes and whatnot. We got a life-size cutout for you. Now, as traditional, I guess we have some music prepared for the time limit, but would you like to give your speech, your Oscar speech now, or would you like to defer that to the end?
I'll speak at the end,
Okay.
before Mr. Breeden does.
But I do want to say it's been an honor serving with you as our superintendent. In fact, when we started to talk about the new superintendent and how we were going to bring out the new superintendent, I asked my 17-year-old son, what question do you have for the new superintendent? He said, is he going to be as cool as Dr. Scheichel and jump out of airplanes? So
I do want to say thank you, though, Chair Lohr and members of the board, for the amazing recognition. So,
and I want to see you skydiving with that one. But sincerely, thank you for all of your service. We'll now move on to comments from the public. We only have one speaker signed up for tonight, and it's Nancy Bassett.
Boy, that doesn't happen often.
I know, right?
As you know, I'm Nancy Bassett, President of the Rockingham County Education Association, and I just want to take a moment to thank Oscar for all of his support, not just of the teachers, but of the entire Rockingham County staff, the bus drivers, the cafeteria workers, the custodians, the assistants. We appreciate everything that you've done for us, and we're hoping to hear what your new adventures are going to be. And I also want to take a moment to thank Dan Breeden. I truly have enjoyed working with you. And one of my highlights was in the spring of 2003, when my son was a senior, and he received the Kelly Coxdale Brittany Lamb Award. And you also gave me the Volunteer of the Year Award, which I had no clue was coming. But just the warmth that you've shared over the years and always being willing to listen, I really appreciate. So thank you very much, both of you.
Thank you, Nancy. That concludes our public comment for this evening. We're now going to move on to highlights by board members, and I'm going to start with Mr. Folk.
Well, in keeping with the theme, the highlight that I would like to share is the pleasure I've had working with Dr. Scheichel and Mr. Breeden. I was mowing yesterday and going back over through my memory of looking for a funny story to tell, and I laughed and laughed and laughed because there are so many, and I decided, well, I'll just share one story about Mr. Breeden. And that was the first VSBA conference we attended was in February of 1996. And Dr. Kidd, I'm pretty sure this is right, Dr. Kidd had found this, one of the transportation multi-seat vans so that the entire board could go down in the same vehicle. Mr. Breeden was sitting in the front and Dr. Kidd was driving. And as we were going, they liked to go, Dr. Kidd always liked to go 33 over the mountain as we went to Richmond. And going through a small town in an intersection, we were behind another vehicle. And I said, you see that car in front of us? And everybody went, yes. I said, well, that was the view that Dale Earnhardt had at the final lap of the Daytona 500, and it was the back end of a Thunderbird. And Mr. Breeden has loved Dale Earnhardt, so the van got very quiet because nobody was sure what the reaction was going to be. But our relationship has been joking back and forth and things like that ever since. When I first encountered Dr. Scheichel, he was a teacher at Broadway High School, and Cheryl Mast and I went to answer questions that the faculty had about insurance. And Dr. Scheichel had many questions and asked very good and pointed questions. And later then, in about, I think the year 2000, Joe Hill recommended him as the administrator for the student access or the student record keeping system that happened to be called SASE. And so I thought, you know, he's the perfect guy to be the SASE administrator. But Eleanor Roosevelt had a saying that great minds talk about ideas or discuss ideas. Average minds discuss events, and small minds discuss people. I am honored, and it has been a pleasure and a privilege to work with two great minds. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. McQuilkin?
Thank you, Ms. Laura. I'd like to begin with a recognition of Kim Dove, who is a social studies teacher at Pence Middle School, and she was honored by being recognized and interviewed in an article that appeared in the National Council for Social Studies, and her topic was IDM, or Inquiry Design Model, and that was really quite an honor for her to be recognized and to be included in that journal. My second and last recognition or highlight is a transition process that we're going through. At the end of May, beginning of June, we attended a reception for our outgoing superintendent, Oscar, and we attended the announcement of the incoming superintendent, Larry Shiflett. We also attended 5 ceremonies, Massanutten Technical Center and the 4 high schools, all at the Atlantic Union Bank Center, which was a first for all of us. And the very last transition is probably the most difficult of all, and that is that we're saying goodbye to Oscar and we're saying goodbye to Dan. And in honor of Dan, who often quotes Robert Kennedy, I have a quote for both of you. It says, "The purpose of life is to contribute in some small way to making things better." And I would say, not small ways, but large ways. You both have done that. Thank you. Thank you.
Are you ready, or do you want me to go?
Whatever.
You can go.
As I have been winding this down, I've been trying to thank people who have played a significant role in helping me to be a better board member over these 23 plus years. And I can't think of any two more significant than Lowell and Oscar. Lowell and I had never known one another prior to becoming board members, had no idea who we were. And we have both marveled over the years at the things we have in common, even though we didn't know one another. The most fortunate for both of us is we both married up to young ladies from up north. And you're right, Lowell. There's so many funny stories that could be told, and maybe we should write a book someday. That might be interesting to somebody. But the friendship has grown beyond funny stories. The friendship has been, we have shared one another's losses. We have celebrated the successes of our children. We have come together to support one another when our children are struggling. And short of my brother, I don't know of a better friend. And Oscar, I didn't know Oscar until we went to a VSBA conference in Williamsburg, and I had the privilege of riding down and back with him. And I came home and I told my wife, I said, if I have anything to say about it, that's our next superintendent. I have rarely, I shouldn't say never, but rarely do you have an opportunity to work with and get to know someone who is genuine and you can trust with anything that you put before them. And I've got to say that on a whole nother level, and this is no knock against anyone else that I know, this guy has more raw intelligence than anybody I've ever come in contact with. And it's going to be a tremendous loss to Rockingham County Schools that he's not there. At last and not least, I want to thank my wife of 37 years next week, Karina, who's here tonight for a rare board meeting, for all of the sacrifices that you've taken, the phone calls that you've taken where people were upset and didn't think that it was wrong to tell you about them. And also our sons, Kyle and Brandon. Today's Kyle's birthday. When I went on the board, Kyle was in the 3rd grade, Brandon was a kindergartner. And now we have a 3rd grade granddaughter and a kindergarten grandson. So thank you all for putting up with it for all these years. And we're going to leave tomorrow for Maine and have a good time. So thank you.
Good for you. Maine's beautiful this time of year. I've been in September. But thank you. It has been an honor serving on the board with you. I personally met you when you were serving on the board with my mother. So it's been really nice to have that continuity and know you previously before getting on the board. So, and thank you for the support that you've given me while I've been on the board. And Karina, thank you so much. And please share my thanks with your family for sharing Dan with us for these years. I think many of us former board members and board members in the room tonight understand that our families really do take a lot of the brunt and see us when things are getting to us and support us. So thank you for supporting Dan for all those years. And Dr. Scheichel, I'm so saddened to see you go. Especially, there's sometimes that, I mean, well, actually, truth be told, I was born in a subdivision in Rockingham County and grew up to have a love for ag, and just not much of a world traveler. I've been out of the country once or twice, but to meet you and someone who speaks fluently several languages, I just felt like we weren't very similar. And all the time you surprised me with similarities. There were so many times I'd be like, I would quote Maya Angelou, and then 5 seconds later he would throw up a slide with Maya Angelou's quote that I just said. And I'm like, are you messing with me? Did you do that after I said it? But I think we are similar. We share a lot of similar ideas. And that was made so obvious to me during the Broadway graduation speech that you gave, which was absolutely a highlight. And the advice was, help me with the source, because I know it as everyone's free to wear sunscreen, the song that I have on my iPad or my playlist. And who was it written by?
Yeah, the article was originally in the Chicago Tribune, and the title was Advice Like Youth Probably Wasted on the Young.
Yes. And it's about wear sunscreen, and then all sorts of great bits of advice. And I absolutely recommend that you look up the song. Everyone's free. But I was just shocked when you pulled that out and started reading that advice to the high school graduates, because it's great advice. And now every time I listen to it, and I listen to it all the time, and my kids are always like, Mom, you've got that song on again. But now I will listen to it and remember you and all the graduates of 2023, which is what this week has really been about, our graduates of 2023. So thank you. And Danelle's not here, is she? Okay. But please pass along our thanks to your family as well for sharing you for all these years. And I guess we'll go to you for highlights.
Yeah, I will say one of my highlights, as Dr. McQuilkin said, the graduations, it was phenomenal. And then in terms of the highlights in this community, there's so many. Right? I remember the first time in 1992 driving down. I had, applied at JMU. I didn't really follow the process that American high school students follow to visit colleges. I simply had said, we're moving to Virginia, and I had applied at a couple of universities. JMU was the first one to reply. That this colorful brochure. I said, sure, looks good, I'll go there. And then drove down from Maryland. Exit 251 was the first one that said Harrisonburg. And I looked around and I said, okay, what did I do? I just came from Europe, from Salzburg, and this was a complete culture shock. The first lunch I had was at Jess's, and I went in there, and the person at the counter was talking to me, and I was like, I will never understand a word anyone says here. Well, it wasn't quite what I thought it was. It wasn't just a local dialect. Actually, he was speaking in Greek, so that was good for me. That wasn't really the same thing. And it was interesting, right? Because at first I thought, okay, I'll finish college here and then move on. And then I got to do my student teaching at Broadway High School. And it was interesting, even at JMU, people were saying, oh, you got to go to Broadway. And I just fell in love with the Broadway community. They allowed me as a kid from Europe, of all things, to teach U.S. government. The kids were always honest. They would be willing to say, Scheichel, that was not a good lesson. And they didn't really just tell me what they thought I wanted to hear. And I always appreciated that. Working class community, they were just like so many of the people I'd grown up with. And so I fell in love with that community. And again, now it's this connection with the ag community. that just means the world to me. And for a community to be so accepting, I ended up spending by choice my entire career here with so many amazing people that I can't even begin to mention. But it is everyone in the school division, like you said, the bus drivers who are the first ones that our students see, and then cafeteria staff and our custodians, and then, of course, office staff, teachers, psychologists, social workers, speech language pathologists, ITRTs, technicians, administrators, athletic directors, everyone, bus garage, transportation, staff, food services, maintenance. It's amazing how much of the community goes into this school division. And when we look at how many students we have, and then how many parents and grandparents that is, the school division affects, half this community directly. And it's such an amazing experience to work with board members who want to improve the school division, and with staff who want to improve the school division, with people who are here today who were committed to saying, you know what, the rhetoric is just getting out of hand. Let's see if we can get to a point of respectful community dialogue, with my central office team, and then just so many personal friendships, including on the school board. I always feel like we've done this together. This is not an effort by either a school board or the school administration. It's really a community effort. And so there's so many stories that just, again, will always stick with me. And the reception at the Broadway graduation was just one sign. When I asked whether there are any former students or just members of the classes when I was there who were in the audience, and I wasn't sure whether it would be 1 or 5, and it was across that building. It was amazing to see how many people were there whose kids were graduating and who previously were my students. In personnel, you have a former student of mine who's being appointed as an administrator. You have administrators currently in central office and at schools that I taught. And so it feels just so complete, and that in the end, I had the chance to speak at the Broadway graduation of all things. And just the farm to table event we had for my retirement, it's so meaningful. And again, I just can't thank everyone enough for all the things that they've done together, with me, and to always try to be better. And when we fail, to try again and fail better and try again. So full of gratitude, and thank you to everyone who's played a role in the school division. It's more amazing people than I could ever list in one evening. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, can we go ahead and applaud that? We'll now move along to our action items. We're going to begin with personnel listing by Dr. Scheichel.
Board members, you have the personnel listing in your materials, and I recommend approval of personnel as presented in your materials and as amended during the earlier closed session.
Thank you, Dr. Scheichel. Board members, do I have a motion?
I move that we follow the superintendent's recommendation regarding personnel.
Thank you. Dr. McQuilkin, do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Breeden. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Next item on our agenda is to approve the minutes from, I'm going to go ahead and combine these two items, May 22nd and May 26th. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes as presented? Thank you, Mr. Fultz. Do I have a second? Second. Thank you, Dr. McQuilkin. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote on approving the minutes from May 22nd, 2023 and May 26th, 2023. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next on the agenda, we have an update to the school board meeting schedule. Members, I'll bring your attention to the August meeting, the first August meeting. We would like to change that from August 14th to August 7th and meet at Rockingham Academy. And then we'll move the August 28th meeting to back here in the Rockingham County Administration Center. The reason for that is to go ahead and appoint a new person to replace Mr. Breeden. We have to do that within 45 days. And that puts us right in the middle of fair, which is, it turns out that August 14th, I am going to be at a sheep show. So if we can move that, that also gives us fair week without a meeting. And July is going to be full. This is our last regular scheduled meeting, but I think we'll be having at least one meeting, special session in June, and probably a couple special sessions in July. So if we could take off for the fair, that would be fantastic. So I would like to go ahead and move, let me get the wording right. To approve the revised 2023 school board meeting schedule as presented. And do I have a second on that?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. McQuilkin. Is there any discussion?
Suits the heck out of me.
Yeah, you'll have the fair off too, Dan. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Next item on the agenda is bills and mileage, and I'll ask Dr. Scheichel.
Board members, you have the May 2023 bills and mileage in your materials, and I recommend approval of those as presented.
Thank you, Dr. Scheichel. Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the bills and mileage for May as presented by the superintendent.
Thank you, Dr. McQuilkin. Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. Falk. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All those in favor of approving the bills and mileage as presented, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Next on the agenda is field trips. Dr. Scheichel.
Board members, I have a number of field trips for your approval tonight. Spotswood High School, the Student Advisory Committee will travel to Blacksburg, June 28th and 29th, 6 students, in fact. East Rockingham High School, FFA State Convention, June 20th to the 23rd, 13 students to Virginia Tech. Montevideo Middle School, TSA National Conference, June 28th through July 2nd, 2 students to Louisville, Kentucky. FFA State Convention, June 20 to 23, 11 students to Virginia Tech. And Broadway High School, TSA National Conference, June 27th to July 2nd, 14 students to Louisville, Kentucky. And I recommend approval of those field trips as presented.
Thank you, Dr. Scheichel. Board members, do I have a motion?
I move that we accept the superintendent's recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Breeden. Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. Falk. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote to approve the superintendent's recommendation to approve all the field trips as presented. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Next on the agenda is authorization of signatures in the absence of the superintendent. Dr. Scheichel.
So this authorization extends the authorized signatories through June 30th, 2024. In this case, the people authorized to sign in the absence of the superintendent will be Doug Aldifer, Assistant Superintendent of Leadership and Academic Support, and Justin Moyers, Chief Financial Officer, to sign all VDOE reports, documents, requisitions, and other official correspondence in the absence of the superintendent. And I recommend approval of this authorization.
Thank you, Dr. Scheichel. Members, do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the superintendent's recommendation regarding the authorization personnel.
Thank you, Dr. McQuilkin. Do I have a second? Thank you, Mr. Falk. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote to follow the superintendent's recommendation to authorize Doug Aldifer Doug Aldifer, Assistant Superintendent of Leadership and Academic Support, and Justin Moyers, Chief Financial Officer, to sign all VDOE reports, documents, requisitions, and other official correspondence in the absence of the superintendent through June 30th to 2024. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Next on the agenda, we have a budget amendment. Ms. Cheryl Mass.
Chair, Lord, members of the board, before I do the budget amendment, I'd like to say, related to Mr. Falk's comment earlier, I was not very long into my job here at Rockingham County Schools, and I vividly remember that meeting at Broadway High School, and he was sassy. And he knows he was sassy. But I've liked him ever since. The budget amendment before you this evening is a budget amendment related to additional state fundings that we received for fiscal year 23 after the budget was originally set. Most of those items are related to ESSER types of funds that we received. We also received additional sales tax, of which we allowed some maintenance projects to be done so we could get ahead of some of those. And also the capital projects amendment is because we're a little farther along in spending money for the Broadway High School project than we thought we would be this time last year. So we needed to just move a little money into this year's.
I recommend approval of the budget amendment as presented.
Thank you, Dr. Scheichel. Members, do I have a motion?
I move that we follow the superintendent's recommendation and Ms. Mass' presentation regarding the budget amendment.
Thank you, Dr. McQuilkin. Do I have a second? Thank you, Mr. Falk. Is there any discussion? Can you tell me what the maintenance projects, can you give us a little bit better idea? Yes.
Well, no, I really can't.
Oh.
I did see a list. I would, I don't know if Steve has anything, but what I would say is probably some of those projects were projects that you saw listed in your maintenance part of the budget book, and he would have worked some of those ahead so that items that were, he calls under the line that were requested but weren't able to be done, some of those now will be able to be done because he's working in advance. Okay. Okay.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote to follow the superintendent's recommendation to approve a budget amendment that will appropriate additional state funds received for fiscal year 2023 after the budget was originally approved as presented by Cheryl Mast. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. And thank you so much. It has been a pleasure working with you, and we're definitely going to miss you. Unless you'd like to come back, would you? Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the community eligibility provision participation for 2023-2024. Ms. Jennifer Williams.
Good evening. I'm here this evening to request the board's approval of Rockingham's application for participation in the community eligibility provision of the National School Lunch Program for school year 23-24, as outlined in my submitted memo. The community eligibility provision, referred to as CEP, it's a provision of the National School Lunch Program that allows schools or school divisions to provide breakfast and lunch meals at no cost to all enrolled students. In order to qualify, a school or division must have at least 40% of the enrolled students automatically eligible for free meals by means other than income. So for example, students who qualify automatically through SNAP, TANF, or have foster or homeless child status. If a division does meet the 40% threshold overall, schools or groups of schools may qualify, which is the case for our division. So qualification, it's based on student data as of April 1st each school year. And based on the April 1st data this school year, we have 12 Rockingham County schools that qualify for CEP. And those schools are Plains, Riverbend, Elkton Elementary, Audubon, Folks Run, Pleasant Valley, Lacey Spring, Mountain View, South River, Cub Run, John C. Myers, and Elkton Middle School. Implementing CEP at these schools will benefit students and families by eliminating out-of-pocket meal costs, removing the need to complete meal applications, and reducing the stigma around school meals within the school. And implementing CEP will benefit our teachers and school staff by reducing administrative tasks such as collecting applications and contacting parents for payment. And implementing CEP will benefit the school nutrition program by reducing the administrative burden of processing applications and eliminating time spent collecting delinquent meal debt. The reduced administrative burden gives the food service program more time to focus on food production and customer service and work on increasing student participation and revenue, which is typically seen in CEP schools. So in conclusion, I recommend pursuing CEP at the 12 qualifying schools for school year 23-24. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you to Ms. Williams for all her work in making this possible too, and advocating for it. It's great when we have 12 schools where all students can be served that way. And I certainly do recommend that the board approve the participation in the community eligibility provision for the 12 qualifying schools for the 23-24 school year.
Thank you. Board members, do I have a motion? Thank you, Mr. Falk. Do I have a second? Thank you, Mr. Breeden. Is there any discussion? Thank you so much for your work on this.
Yep, you're
I
welcome.
think that'll really help not only our students, but our entire division. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
But we're not done yet. Let's vote. Members, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion to follow the superintendent's recommendation to participate in the CEP of the National School Lunch Program at the 12 qualifying schools for the 2023-24 school year as presented, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Next, we have fashion marketing textbook selection by Mr. Eric Fitzgerald.
Fashion is my thing. Let me tell
Yeah.
you.
Another short
sure.
timer too.
Before I get into the textbook selection, Mr. Breeden and Dr. Scheichel, I thank you too for all that you've done for me in my career. Lots of things that we wanted to try in CTE, lots of things that we want to try just in school in general, you guys have made possible. And this community has been very, very, very fortunate to have the leadership that we have. I really think that that needs to continue, that type of leadership, and I hope our new board and our new superintendent for sure will embrace all of the thoughts that you guys have had, because you guys have been nothing but exceptional. During my travels, in my 40 years, I've traveled along just about to every county in the state, and CTE people are pretty close-knit, pretty tight-knit folks. And I can't tell you how many times I have heard, I wish we could do what Rockingham does. And that says a lot about the leadership that you guys, the whole board, and everybody here provides. So thank you very much. Now, with that in mind, let's get back to fashion. Back in the fall of 2022, we formed a committee, a fashion textbook committee, to review fashion textbooks for our marketing program. And at this time, I am pleased to announce that a selection has been made of the textbook named Fashion, and it's a Goodhart and Wilcox book. And we did have representation on the committee from all of the different schools. We had parents and students look at it too, and that is the book that they have recommended. So tonight I seek your approval to go ahead and purchase those books.
Thank you.
I do recommend approval of the textbook as presented by Mr. Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Dr. Scheichel. Board members, do I have a motion?
I move that we follow the superintendent's recommendation regarding the approval of this particular textbook, Fashion Marketing. Fashion.
Thank you, Dr. McQuilkin. Do I have a second? Thank you, Mr. Falk. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All those in favor of the fashion marketing textbooks, Fashion, the 7th edition, as selected by the committee to best meet the state competencies for the course. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong spot. Okay, let's start over. Motion to follow the superintendent's recommendation to select the fashion marketing textbook from Goodhart Wilcox as presented by Eric Fitzgerald, Director of CTE. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for your service. Next on the agenda, we have Mr. Greg Gillette, Virginia Public School Authority Educational Technology Notes.
Chair Lohr, members of the board, and Dr. Scheichel, thank you for your time today and for your dedication to the students of Rockingham County. Before you is a resolution regarding annual reimbursement from the Virginia Public School Authority Educational Technology Notes Series 24. This resolution allows for the spending of $648,000 for RCPS and $26,000 for MTC beginning July 1st, 2023. These funds will be reimbursed in June of 2024 following a bond sale. This initiative is designed to ensure necessary hardware and infrastructure is in place and maintained to support Virginia's online testing initiative.
Thank you. Dr. Scheichel.
And I recommend to adopt the Virginia Public School Authority Educational Technology Note Series 24 resolution as presented by Gregory Gillette. And thank you for all your work on this and for your continued work on our technology infrastructure.
Yes, thank you. And, board members, do I have a motion?
I move that we accept the superintendent's recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Breeden. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. McQuilkin. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote on the motion to follow the superintendent's recommendation to adopt the Virginia Public School Authority Educational Technology Notes Series 24 resolution as presented by Mr. Gillette. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much, and thank you for all your work on that. Okay. That concludes our action section of our meeting. We're now going to move on to informational items. And the first item on the agenda is the community dialogue presentation by Dr. Catherine Barnes.
Thank you so much, Superintendent, Chair Lohr, and all of the committee, and especially to Dr. Oscar Scheichel and Dan Breeden for all of your years of service. It is a pleasure for me to come and present to you tonight what is really, in many ways, a wrap-up culmination of a very challenging and remarkable year and a half of developing this innovative community dialogue initiative. What we're hoping to do, and actually am going to be joined, it's not just going to be me, it's going to be other of the advisory group members, Renee Reed, Amanda Ritchie, and Dee Grimm. Unfortunately, both Joe Shoker and Katie LaPera had other family commitments that meant they were not able to come this evening, but send their regrets. And we feel that this is in many ways very fitting to do this at this time of transition because Dr. Oscar Scheichel, of course, has shown tremendous leadership in helping to really take the risk of innovating with something new and to support it all along the way when it was really clear that we were, in many ways, as Kipser was saying, experimenting our way forward together and willing to give it that space and time to unfold. And we're also very happy, I'd say, collectively on behalf of the advisory group and others who participated, to welcome Dr. Larry Shiflett in his new role in leadership moving forward. So this evening, sorry, let me find there we go. What we're going to be wanting to do is just to briefly set up and remind folks about where this community dialogue initiative came from and its mission, and to remind you of some of the different stages that we have gone through with it, give you a few of the highlights of some of the things that we discovered through the process, the ideas, some of the big themes and ideas that community members came up with, as well as some of the ideas to spark action that we're hoping that the school board and school personnel might consider moving forward, and then give some sort of thoughts about moving forward from here. So you will probably recall that one of the reasons why this initiative happened is, I think you more than anyone else will be aware of how school board meetings and many communications in the community had, especially during the COVID years, become extremely contentious. And there was a feeling of how, given that the schools are so reliant on community support and are integrally entwined with them, how to create a pathway for people to come together to engage with each other in constructive and respectful dialogue. So our task was to create a framework for doing so. And truly, I think we were able to do this. So this is the mission statement that we had developed as a framework for the dialogue, and one that could well last. We also, all along, had recognized this is not a group for making any kind of decisions, but that wanted to transmit the ideas that came back out of that process to you all. So this is what we are doing now. It took a year and a half. And this, once again, you've seen this diagram many times before. And we've moved from the core dialogue group process, and we have some other members here tonight we want to welcome who have come out as well. We also, over the course of this past year, have had the remarkable ability to integrate system-wide process of dialogue amongst 11th graders around key questions that has paralleled with the community dialogue process and came together really wonderfully in the first public community dialogue that was fully open, no invitation, anyone could participate, on March 23rd. And we'll come back and tell you a little bit more about that tonight. Dr. McQuilkin, I know, was participating in that as well, and might be able to share some reflections on that too. The report of that is now in your packet and fully available, along with all of the other reports. Also, just to remind you and the rest of the community that we have sought all along to be very transparent in this initiative. And on the RCPS website, all of the reports, all of the school board presentations and updates can be found, and really commend people being able to look at those and to really study many of the reports, I think especially, that came out of it. So you will probably also recall that the big framing question that we had for the process was around how to create a safe and caring environment for all Rockingham County Public School students in ways that are both consistent with the law, while also considering the diverse values and perspectives of the Rockingham County community. And I must say that we had, in all of the sessions, the questions in many ways were truly that open. We did not try to put topics on the agenda for people. We really had very open questions. And I think one of the things that was quite interesting about that is that inviting people to really share from their personal lived experience and the lived experience of their children, grandchildren, friends, and other loved ones, we've ended up finding people talking really very directly from experience, and it ended up being very localized issues, and their responses to them were very localized responses. And I think that that became kind of quite an interesting shift in some ways, because it took us out of, I think, some of the big national trends, which of course were also coming in, to really look what is true of Rockingham County and Rockingham County Public Schools. It was interesting that it was much easier in many ways to find common ground on the need for safety and belonging for students. And I'll come back to some of the insights that were developed around some of the ways of doing that. But very quickly, especially when we had the core dialogue group, we realized that one of the real issues that we had to address were what were the causes of the trust gap. That was what it ended up being framed. And it was a sense that a breakdown and a gap in trust was really driving a lot of the anxiety, anger, and fear that sometimes was coming up in the public debates. So we spent a lot of time wrestling with that question. And we realized that some of the factors are situational. The COVID pandemic crisis obviously created stresses, as well as bigger national trends in polarization. But we also realized one of the things that we discovered in really engaging in deep dialogue was the realization that there's long-term, deeper sources, which are partly rooted in the rapid changes that are occurring within Rockingham County. In a sense, among many, that a change in the way of life and values that are deeply cherished may be being put under strain, and that values that had been predominantly traditional, conservative, and Christian, which really had shaped a lot of expectations of what public schools should be, were no longer quite certain in the same way in many people's eyes. At the same time as realizing that particularly a diversification of the population might in some ways create some challenges in terms of making it a welcoming environment for all, there's also real recognition that it's a tremendous asset for Rockingham County going forward. And much of the question it seemed to come down to, how does that community come together, stay strong, and all of the values that people see as the greatest strength again and again of Rockingham County, which in fact are around community and service, remain at the forefront. And a realization that the greatest asset of Rockingham County schools are really the quality, experience, dedication, and kindness of teachers and staff and administrators, and yet a sense that under all of the pressures of community conflict, that was really hitting hard on people who are working in the school systems, who were feeling they might not always be supported and were coming under pressure. And so a sense that came out very strongly in the dialogue that conflict, particularly organized around political polarization, has potentially very difficult effects on the school system if public education becomes weaponized. And people, I think, were united, even though they had many different political views and many different orientations on different topics that we were coming up with. I think people were united on the feeling that somehow needing to come back together again in respectful dialogue to find a way forward and live into the values that people cherish for community and service. And we'll hear much more about that later on in the presentation. Had a number of ideas about some specific things that could be done to help address that. And I'm not going to go into the details. We've presented many of these to you before. They are in the board packet, in the reports, and we really commend you to study them more closely. But we did realize that some of the issues are not only about process, they are also about curriculum and what happens in schools. And there was a lot of time that was spent really trying to map out and wrestle with a range of ideas about what are the roles of schools and what are the roles of families in education, and an affirmation that both have roles, and how that can sometimes lead to different dilemmas. Once again, I'm not going to go through all of these dilemmas, but I think one of the contributions, and this was especially of the core dialogue, was in fact to map them out. And I think everybody in that dialogue recognized that there's no simple answers, but if you get the balance right, there's great strength for the students and for all in the system. And so there's, once again, much more around what these questions mean, why they matter, and how to address them, especially in the core dialogue group report. One of the things that was also coming up again and again as a question is, what is the role of schools in meeting the personal needs of students beyond their educational and perhaps sporting and vocational needs? What if schools have not traditionally been designed to meet the economic, social, emotional needs of students, and many people sometimes think that really schools should stick to their lane and not do that. However, I think as we explored this more and more, there was a sense that really in today's context, students will not be able to thrive as learners if their basic human needs are not being met, that they need to have that security and well-being. And in some ways, schools need to somehow figure out how to do that together with families. And the recognition that no individual can solve the problems we face. However, the community as a whole has everything needed to address these challenges, I think in many ways summed up the sense that came from that, and that schools perhaps uniquely are a space where families can connect with the resources that they may need, and resources of all kinds. And so how can schools be a vital part of the overall safety net to ensure every child is protected and cared for and thrives, working together with families and also other community partners? How can schools be a connector? I think was a lot of it. At the same time, there was a sense of how could schools also really think about ways, maybe like IEPs happen, where there's kind of care teams for students who are facing crises or seem to be really facing very challenging problems, and bringing together students' family, community supports, and others into to help figure out ways of surrounding the student with care and support, in sense of how to address the barriers to that, but also how to embrace that as an ethic. At the same time, especially given the escalating mental and behavioral health crises that I think everybody is very well aware of, there's a sense that a lot of that is happening in schools, and on their watch, teachers and staff are having to manage it. And there is a sense within the dialogue, again and again, in the whole large group and the public dialogues about schools need to rise to this challenge, and yet how to lift the burden off of teachers. And there are lots of recommendations for that. It's been like teachers can't hold it if they are going to continue to survive and thrive in the profession. And so lots of ideas about how to address that, and also lots of real applause and appreciation for the tiers of support initiative that Rockingham County already has had in place, and just to strengthen that further. And when we were here in February, we also had already given, and I'm not going to go over it all again, but I think what was one of perhaps the clearest examples of how we were able to address some really contentious issues and figure out what I would basically see as quite non-ideological principles for addressing how schools can best navigate the boundary that occurs when students may be making choices that are perhaps not supported by their families. And what became kind of seen as kind of navigating that interface between student autonomy and parental guardian authority. And there were some very interesting principles, and of course this applies to many kind of contexts, but most notably and contentiously recently it's been around issues of gender identity. And there was a real sense of having Rockingham County Public Schools focus on case-by-case basis, and to put safety first, and then to not necessarily say, how do we engage families, but also a notion that if safety is present, support bravery. And that might mean Rockingham County school personnel actually helping in some way students and their families to have the tough conversations about what it is that they need, as long as students are safe. So once again, commend you to read the report around that and consider those principles. In the March 23rd public dialogue, I think we really came back front and center to the questions around fostering safety and belonging in a caring environment for students. Many things that came up there, but some of the things that struck me was the observation, first of all, that the value of having the 11th grade students involved in the process. And I know that they came and presented to you a few weeks ago, and they were absolutely insightful, self-confident, able to have their voices very present, and really, I think, gave a lot of insight to the adults who were there. And some of the things that they shared was very eye-opening for people. And I think some of them, especially when it came to safety and belonging, was the recognition that today's, especially middle and high school students, are dealing with the same kind of challenges that have always been present, that I suspect everybody in this room faced, around bullying, trying to fit in, pressure to figure out your future, pressure to succeed. The age-old things that, especially if you are a minority, racial, ethnic, national, gender minority, feeling under special pressure of being potentially marginalized and excluded, all of those things are also present today. Yet, in addition to it, today's students have the pressure of social media 24/7, potentially, most of them, and that they can't leave it behind, and that they are sometimes overexposed and underprotected. There was also a recognition, and this really hit home for me, that today's 11th graders are those who were in first grade when Sandy Hook happened. They have grown up with lockdown drills on a regular basis. And they, in every table group, they talked about how much fear of gun violence that they have. And they are living with that, and anxiety levels need to also be understood through that. And then, of course, in addition, they were the ones who had to deal with, at the exact time when they most need to be with peers, the pressures of being at home during COVID, through no fault of really their own. And so this need for extra support is really understandable, and the need to listen to their needs came through very strongly. They highlighted, and together with the many adults around the room, including some who are RCPS personnel, some particular things around school discipline and the need to support learning, accountability, predictability, and safety. Many spoke of the need for disciplinary measures to be consistent, fair, and effective, and also reflect shared norms. And there was a lot of sense within that dialogue that there's a need for the community to engage in further dialogue about what are the norms that should be expected during the school day, but also to have students a part of those conversations so that they internalize them and they are willing to hold themselves and each other as peers accountable to constructive pro-social norms. There is also a sense that really school personnel as well as students need to up their game in interrupting hostile and bullying behavior. This came across as a real problem, a real challenge, and a sense of needing to have a lot more attention paid to that. A sense that the restorative justice approaches that are being developed in the schools perhaps offer a really positive way from that, because, for example, one told us a story of being called racial hate names. The student who did that was suspended, but then they came back and continued. They were just back in school again. There was never an opportunity to engage in conversation about the nature of the harm caused, to apologize and to learn and to change from it, in the sense that if there is an opportunity to learn through the process of addressing stuff, that is how things may change. And so real commendation and support for a more restorative justice process. A final thing that came out really strongly in this, and perhaps not for the reasons that you might have expected if you watch Facebook all the time, but it was agreed, again and again that bathrooms are especially problematic spaces and that something needs to be done around those, whether it be vaping and people feeling uncomfortable, whether it be that's a particular place where a lot of hate speech happens and where those who feel are already vulnerable may feel especially vulnerable there and feel threatened. To just generally it feeling uncomfortable in there. And a lot of people were actually expressing support for single-use bathrooms. That's obviously a big, a big infrastructure ask, so that may not be on the short-term agenda, but on the short-term agenda to really kind of think about how that might be addressed as a kind of a key site for safety and well-being. So those were some of the key points. Once again, really recommend going back and studying the reports and the findings, because all of these and many more are elaborated. And in just a few moments, I want to, I want to invite up Dee Grimm and Amanda Ritchie, who are going to speak to some further cross-cutting ideas to support action.
Before I start my official role, I just have to say, I look around the room and I'm probably the oldest person in it. And I have all these interconnections with so many people in this room for various reasons that kind of overwhelm me. And it makes me realize how ridiculously invested I am in Rockingham County Public Schools. Thanks, Oscar, for pulling me back in. But I do think passionately, I believe in Rockingham County Public Schools. I have my entire career. I still do. I probably won't go away even now, but I do think of all the things I've ever done, this has been the most remarkable. So as Catherine was saying, the thing that kind of evolved in the conversations that we didn't control in any way whatsoever, in addition to just sharing stories, sharing ideas, hearing different perspectives, a natural outgrowth was constant ideas. Well, maybe we could do this and maybe we could do that. And applause to the people who managed the tables at all the dialogues, because they were sitting there copiously typing as fast as they could to try to get it all down. I encourage you to all read the report, all 100 pages of it now. I don't know, it's getting there. Because there's so many ideas embedded in it. And what one of our hopes is, in addition to fostering this process and letting it continue, is there's some great ideas here. And I hope that school administrators, faculties, everybody just picks up on these things, and communities, and says, yeah, we could do that here, and makes it happen, because that's where the changes will come. So one thing that came up, for example, was to work in county pockets a little bit, because we do have our feeder areas, and so have smaller dialogue initiatives in each little group, so each little sub-community can talk about some of the things that they feel. To try to, I think Rockingham County is so grounded in best practice in every subject area, but just to continue that cultivated classroom environment so that kids do feel safe to also share and connect and problem solve. Partnering with parents and those types of things. I'm not going to read all these to you because they're all in the report and we know you're all going to read them. But these are the kinds of things that just spontaneously would come up. And these were not coming from us. These were coming from the people sitting at the tables, session after session. And I just jumped your thing, so you do the next one.
Okay.
I can follow directions.
Yeah, like Dee said, these are all organic. They just came about in all of the discussions that we had, and luckily we have somebody who's really great at summarizing what was talked about. So increasing awareness of student support systems. Catherine talked a little bit about that and the mental health and behavioral health supports we have. Encouraging students to be active in creating a welcoming and inclusive community. Supporting school-based extracurricular activities like multicultural nights, and developing or strengthening mentoring and buddy programs. A good example is the Sources of Strength initiative that is going on in Rockingham County right now.
The 11th grade dialogue, which she shared some insights from, I think anyone who was at that last meeting was profoundly moved by their presentation. And the good news is, from what I understand, it will continue next year. They were all 11th graders. They're moving into 12th grade. And I think they're also getting some attention for other things. So I think that's a really positive thing. The kids mentioned, as did the adults, the policies and programs that focus on respect. And I think by doing what we did and the 11th graders doing what they did, we can become a model for teaching kids. This is how we proceed in this world to make things happen and be successful. So to sort of model for them what they have not yet seen, to let schools take the initiative. Elementary schools, middle schools have these same kind of little pocket programs, again, that foster how to talk about respect, how to talk about safety, how to acknowledge each other's differences in a good way, and just support collaboration all across the board. And again, these are not one-time things. These came up over and over and over again in different table combinations with different groups of people. So it wasn't like the same group sitting down in every meeting rehashing. It was just all new.
And if you read our reports, which I know everyone is going to do, some of these ideas are said, time and time again because they were brought up quite frequently. Continue to expand the peer dialogue amongst students, support policies and programs that focus on respect. I think we already said that one.
I think I did all that.
Oh, okay. I forgot to switch it. Okay. Create disciplinary processes designed to support students' acknowledgement, repair, and learning of why their behavior was not acceptable. Helping to empower students to stand up for each other, providing supports to empower teachers with the skill and training to address behaviors when harm happens. We found that teachers are often feeling tired and under pressure and not necessarily sure of how to handle some of the situations that they're encountering in their classrooms. And then recognizing the tension between student autonomy and parental authority. So I think we'll hand it back to you, Catherine.
Just saying one more time, there are many, 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 many action items throughout the report. And they're all
So this, I really think Rockingham County Public Schools deserve some credit because I think it's hard to turn on the national news these days and not hear what's happening in school boards meetings across the country. And to anybody's knowledge, this is one of the very few initiatives that is actually trying to get ahead of it. And since it's happened, we have made national news, and we're going to play a clip from that for you in a minute because it does feel like something fairly significant on National Public Radio. There is a story that was launched on the night of our public dialogue with support from Randy B. Hagee at WMRA, the local station, who did the reporting on it. There have been requests for across the state. Some of the students are going down along with Amy Johnson, Katie LaPera to a Virginia Department of Education conference to talk about the student dialogue. There have been requests for other state conferences, including the Virginia School Board Association conference. Talk with you about that later. And national conferences of people wanting to learn how this has been done. And so I think that there's a sense that this process that you have supported has as a model, once again, Rockingham County Public Schools at the forefront. If you can play video 1, so you can listen and see some pictures at the same time.
As arguments continue to flare across the country about what is best for kids in schools, one community is down. Rockingham County, Virginia is in the Shenandoah Valley, and they're working to bring those who disagree about public education and transgender students to the same table and possibly the same page. From member station WMRA in Harrisonburg, Randy B. Hagee reports.
School board meetings in Rockingham County used to erupt in screaming matches over pandemic restrictions, how racial history is taught, and how to treat transgender students.
If God exists, God...
Stop with the socialist brainwashing of my children and put God back in schools. Thank you.
The yelling and screaming caused district leaders to hire a professional peace builder. That person is Catherine Barnes. Her job is to facilitate civil public discourse.
How do we hold on to that which is precious about values and traditions in Rockingham while at the same time adapting and growing in response to 21st century developments?
Barnes sets a calm tone as 80 people look on. They sit at round tables in a meeting room at a small local college. All of them came with various political viewpoints and religious values.
You'll notice also that there have been some communication agreements on your table, and they're intended
The
as
group is
ways
about
of
to respond to
helping
prompted discussion questions while sharing a meal. Reporters were asked to leave for this part of the event. But later, I called some participants, including Dee Grimm. The retired English teacher says she leans lightly left and thought these conversations were constructive because they started with
personal stories and backgrounds, because when you bring that to the table, suddenly people become human.
one of the ground rules was trying to understand differences rather than judge them. That worked for Dave Dean. He's a lifelong county resident on the conservative side. He doesn't want anyone on the margins to be treated poorly, but he says many parents in the county want to retain control over their kids' gender identity.
Some parents on one side don't want their child to have any autonomy until they leave home. On the opposite side, you have parents who are going to give their child full autonomy as soon as they're able to express themselves.
Sometimes these conversations got tense, says Cecile Deason. One of her 3 kids is transgender.
It's very emotional because these are real things that are happening to people. One woman shared about her child attempting to take their life, and that's so hard to hear, and then you want to comfort them.
It was very productive and very, quite frankly, inspiring.
Joe Shoker is a retiree who says he's conservative, with traditional family values that include being a good citizen and coexisting with people you disagree with.
I think kids being at home with lockdowns and doing all their classes online led parents really across the nation to be more cognizant of the instruction that was going on in the buildings. That combined with the culture wars almost created a wedge between parents and schools.
To rebuild trust between parents and schools is what Donica Hadley is hoping for. She's a college professor with 3 kids in the system.
We need to do better. Our kids deserve better, and what they have seen in the last several years has not been the best of us. But it's not too late to change. I still have hope.
The Dialogue Initiative will conclude with a public meeting of about 150 people tonight. They will meet with the hope of, if not agreeing about anything, at least hearing each other out. For NPR News, I'm Randy B. Hagee in Harrisonburg, Virginia.
As arguments
Oh,
continue to
sorry.
flare
I
across
did
the
somehow-
country about what is best.
Boy, I should not be given this. You can move it forward one slide, I guess. Each of our core dialogue participants were asked to reflect on their experience with the Community Dialogue Initiative, and we just put together a compilation of what they shared with us. It is our hope that this video gives you some sense of how beneficial these conversations have been for the people involved. You can play the video.
As arguments continue to flare across
I didn't touch it that time. So community and connection, my overall impression of the RCPS Community Dialogue Initiative can be summed up with those two foundational principles. I have seen firsthand how this group of diverse individuals, often with very divergent perspectives, has risen above being keyboard warriors to in-person connection through timely and challenging conversations, all with the important goal of maximizing every student's educational experience. Nearly all participants in this initiative found common ground in the belief that one of the greatest strengths of Rockingham County is our sense of community, yet most lamented a loss of connection. This dialogue initiative accomplished nothing less than creating community and connection among a diverse range of people, proving that we can come to the table in respectful dialogue, even when we disagree with one another, and particularly when we are focused on ensuring the safety and belonging of all of our students. I entered the dialogue a strong parent advocate, and I remain so. My strong faith and personal values, my commitment to protecting childhood innocence, and my belief that education should be a collaborative partnership have informed my conversations every step of the way. I stand on my principles, and yet I'm also deeply committed to the idea that through dialogue and an exchange of perspectives, we can learn to better understand others and develop relationships that will help maximize the potential of our schools and every student within them. This group has been willing to engage with others in a healthy and respectful way, and we have set a model for our county and, more importantly, for our children. They are watching and they are learning from us. And we set the example for what we want to see in the future. There is great value in sharing these conversations, and I hope that there is continued investment in this effort, which I truly believe is helping to move our community forward together.
So I had a number of remarks, but this slide is already up, and it's probably almost time for us to kind of wrap up. But with this final report, there's a clear path for Rockingham County to have a proven mechanism for addressing complex and potentially contentious issues as they arise. Participants in the process requested more dialogue on a regular basis, emphasized in the personal reflections that you just saw in Amanda's words. The advisory group is asking your consideration of the benefits outlined in this call to action slide. And this call to action slide is for the board of the next steps to take or should be taken for this initiative. The process that was developed is flexible and can be used at the local level, including individual schools, and for larger system-wide complex issues. And I think you saw that in some of the ideas to spark where that could be done. Last time we presented to you in March, you also had a presentation from Dr. Harris and Dr. Kastner with BWP on the feedback they received as part of their community engagement for the superintendent search. It was an aha moment for many dialogue participants who were at that meeting, as much of the information paralleled between what BWP gathered and the findings in the reports from the community dialogue events. And this was very evident and profound to pull those. So we encourage you to, again, to look and read at those reports. I don't think we can emphasize that enough. There's a real body of data there. And perhaps go back and look at some of that data that you got from BWP and share them with division leaders as you plan your next steps. Perhaps even having a point person on the board who understands and advocates for this framework as you further your business. Dee and Amanda presented just a small number of the ideas to spark action that were part of the findings. And you may want to consider setting aside time for that dreaded summer school board retreat day to talk a little bit about these findings and ideas, because perhaps it will also spark some more ideas from all of you for the steps forward. Dr. Shiflett, he attended I think he attended the last dialogue, is that correct, Dr. Shiflett? And we really welcome the opportunity the advisory group does to review the reports and the findings with him and to talk a little bit further about that as he plans for the many transitions that are going to happen in the next year. and this work will continue to be important to foster and help you through those transitions. Finally, I need to thank a number of people. This was a seed that started quite some time ago with the board and Dr. Scheichel and Mr. Shoker and Ms. Grimm. And it's been 18 months. And when we started this, we never thought it was going to be 18 months. I don't think Dr. Barnes thought it was going to be 18 months. And Dr. Barnes has hung in there with us every single time. And we've had to take steps back and forth and take 3 steps forward and 4 steps back and continue to work through that and be tenacious. And the advisory and the core dialogue stayed with us every step of the way, all the way through to March 23rd. And it's important work. And there are people in this community, lots of people, and particularly the participants that would like to see this continue. So I strongly encourage you and Dr. Shiflett, as you work forward, to think about this information and to find ways to use this framework that's now been developed to help you tackle and work through some of those things that are going to come up in the near future. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you, Dr. Barnes, for all your hard work. Thank you, Oscar, for your work, particularly to Katie Lapira. Katie put these videos together this morning for us. We did the slides today. This was a work in progress as you know, we end the school year and we have lots of busy lives. And to some of the core dialogue people are here and people who took time to put give us their comments and their feedback. We had hoped to have a few more gentlemen in there, but we got mostly the ladies. So next time around, we're going to snag them to provide some more feedback to share with you too. So thank you for your time this evening. Dr. Barnes, did you have anything else you wanted to add? Yeah, thank you so much. We appreciate your time this evening.
Thank you all. I'm looking forward to reading all of this. And Dr. Shiflett, I think you and I have discussed we might need, instead of a summer retreat, we might need summer camp retreat, school board camp this year. Definitely, I want to put this closer to the top of our very long list because I think this will help us work through a lot of the things that are already on our list. So thank you all for this important work. Board members, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to say thank you again to everyone who was involved. It was amazing. We had no idea what's going to develop from it. And you just approved a field trip for students to actually, be part of that ongoing process. And there's now a structure for student advisory, and students are getting trained to be student facilitators. And so lots and lots of different steps. And other school districts asking for help with a similar process. So lots of amazing things. So yeah, in Blacksburg, that's DOE. And so students are going to present to state leaders about this process, and state leaders are excited about it. So it's really good to see, and wouldn't have happened without this group and without Dr. Barnes. Thank you.
Yes, thank you all very much. Next item on our agenda is policy revisions by Ms. Becky Tennell.
Thrown into the fire.
Chair Lohr, members of the board, and Dr. Scheichel, you approved my appointment to be the supervisor of policy and compliance a few weeks ago. I'm very excited about the opportunity to take on a new role after having been an administrator for about 20 years. Marcy Williams is never one to lay low very long, so the phone rang when there was about to be a VSBA policy update, and she and I participated in that together. There were about 45 policies that were recommended. We're bringing 20 to you this evening. Most of the policies that you have in front of you are very minor. One of them is a complete addition of a policy that comes from the VSBA, the one for physical examinations of students. And then the rest of the policies, a lot of it is just wording, like we've renamed the nurse, we've renamed some support personnel. The one that's the most interesting, I think, is the threat assessment team. There's going to be a requirement for that at the division level, and training every 3 years. So I've read over these. I know Dr. Scheichel has read over them as well, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
And these will come for action at the first July meeting?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And at that point, I think we'll bring the others for review.
Board members, any questions? My only question would be, so these will be in the, are we even printing a policy manual for next year?
I think it's all online. I
Yeah,
don't
well, the policy manual is online, but there are printed copies still kept, yes.
That are given out at the beginning of school? That handbook that I get at the beginning of
So the
school,
handbook-
these aren't in that.
The handbook, the policy manual is this thick. The handbook is about like this. So the handbook mostly contains policies, or really only contains policies that are selected and that are just a small fraction of our overall policy manual, but that are of particular importance to families. So no, the threat assessment team's policy or the annual budget policy or school board member in-service activities, they
Yeah,
will not
that's true.
show up in the handbook. There may be some that, depending on the content, may end up in the handbook, but no, the vast majority are in the policy manual. But we do have a printed copy. There's a folder at Caitlin's desk, and again, it's massive.
But as far as these changes won't impact the handbook, or we'll get the changes made before the handbooks are printed
right.
at least.
Yeah, these should not, and again, these acceptable computer use, yeah, again, if that's approved. And again, in the handbook, it's also clear that, the board doesn't just approve policies in time for handbook printing. So as policies change, for example, the drug and alcohol policy that changed this spring, there's then, if it is something that would normally be in the handbook that families signed off on, then there's some communication. So we pushed it out via email, but it's clear even in the handbook that, the board can change policy at, the second November meeting, for example, and that still means it's going into effect. You don't have to wait until the next school year. It just is getting communicated.
Okay.
So we should be good with the handbook.
Thank you. Board members, any other questions? Thank you very much.
Yes. Can I just say thank you for being a board member for as long as you have. I was at McGahkeysville when you were a board member there, and you're iconic in that area. And I know you are throughout Rockingham County, but I appreciated my relationship with you when I was a principal there, and that I knew I could always call on you. And so I'll miss you being on the board very much. And Oscar, you know how I feel about you. It's been a great 6 years together, and I wish you weren't leaving, but I wish you all the best.
Thank you. Board members, you have financial review for May 2023 and the VSBA Conference on Education information in your packets. Any questions on those? That concludes our information items. We'll now move into other business, school board questions and comments. I'm going to go with Lowell Mr. Folk first. Thank you. Dr. McQuilkin?
Thank you, Ms. Law. I think I'm on. When I listen to the community dialogue, I can't tell you how much I appreciate all the work that has gone into this, and the thought and the outreach that you have expended to make this a very successful time. And when I hear communication and connection, the two words that came out, and I have another word that begins with a K. It's not a C, but it's a K, and the word is kind. And of the 5 ceremonies, graduation ceremonies that occurred this past week, the word kindness was brought up at least in 4 of the 5. If it, sometime in the speakers, when the speakers spoke. And so I'm thinking, this is what you're saying. You're saying you want people to be kind to one another. And so I thank you for that. I also want to say a big thank you to Oscar and Dan. I know we've said this before, but we appreciate you both so much, and we wish you well. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. McQuilkin. I would like to echo that. Thank you, Mr. Breeden, Dr. Scheichel. You will be missed. We hate to see you go, but wish you all the best. I have just quick questions for both of you. So what are you doing next? Dr. Scheichel, what will you be doing next? Your microphone's not on.
I will be taking the month of July off. See my brother in Austria. He already talked me into participating in a triathlon with him. So if I survive that for some magic reason, I'll be back after that week. And then I will, in the fall, I will teach some school law classes at JMU.
Did you really just say, I'll be back?
I'll be back.
In your Austrian accent?
I'll be back.
That's wonderful. And Mr. Breeden?
I'll yield the answer to that to my wife. She'll know more what I'm doing than I do.
That is an excellent answer. And I just want to take a moment to recognize everyone in the room. Usually I ask if there are any students, and I don't believe there are any students because it's summer, yay. But I'd like to especially note Ms. Renee Reed is with us tonight. Thank you for being here tonight. And then I want to acknowledge, we've got several people that this is your last regularly scheduled school board meeting as staff. So if you can please rise and we can give you a round of applause. Stand up. I can see you. I can see you, at least both of you.
Come on, Cheryl.
Cheryl. And thank you all for your service, Mr. Fitzgerald and Ms. Mass. You will also be missed. And I think now I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Breeden.
I think Mr. Breeden should have the last word.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay,
Yeah,
I kind
I
of,
will definitely want to make sure that Mr. Breeden gets the
Okay.
last word tonight.
then Dr. Scheichel.
So, just briefly, you know, we talked about all the people we need to thank, including so many in this room. I would be remiss if I didn't thank my wife, Danelle, for all the support. Couldn't have done this over these last few years without her. I didn't just fall in love with the community over these last 28 years, but I certainly have also fallen in love in the community. So in addition to that Broadway connection, I now have family in Elkton. And if you know anything about her, you know that over the last few years, she has shown tremendous self-restraint. I'm not sure how much longer a reminder not to speak out because I'm superintendent will work. So I guess July 1 is coming, and I can't wait to see what she will have to say. Having Mr. Breeden here, and you know, we talked about this earlier, Robert F. Kennedy certainly is very meaningful to me too. And one of the quotes in which he actually used a quote from George Bernard Shaw has always spoken to me. So some men see things as they are and say, why? I dream things that never were and say, why not? I remember sitting in Atlanta with Lowell at a national conference. And even when sessions were going on, we kept going in the hallway in our conversations and asking that same question, you know, why not? Why not try something new? And we don't always have to do what we've always done. And that really means a lot to me. And I think sometimes when I hear people arguing against trying new things and not doing what we've always done, it reminds me of what Stutz Terkel said about people who criticize the 60s, right? Those are often people who take delight in the failure of dreams. And I think we've dreamed a lot, we've dared greatly, and we've dreamed together. And so all of those in the proverbial arena with us, I want to say thank you. I'm not going to read the Teddy Roosevelt quote, but those who know that quote or that speech know what I'm talking about. And so many people who are willing to roll up their sleeves together and say, we can make this better, to risk failure, but then to keep going again and to try again and fail better and to do it over and over again. Specifically, you know, in this, the group of people that are here, although Doug isn't here, he's certainly in that group as well. Eric Fitzgerald, he is a legend in Virginia and beyond, and it's been so much fun going to the Bay with you and doing all these things in this community. Cheryl Mast, Larry Shiflett, Doug Alderford, Michelle Judd, the executive team that I've had the privilege to work with is second to none. And there were so many times when we really talked for hours and hours and hours about new things we can try, but also just trying to get a community through a global pandemic. And again, that was a difficult time, but without you, that wouldn't have happened. And so I think we are leaving RCPS in good hands and in good shape. our staff and our leadership at our schools and central office, and some who are making the transition from schools to central office, like Becky. They truly are amazing. And I think it is important for the community to know that conversations around change and what we want to hold on to and what we want to be different and what everyone's values are and how they flow into a school division of this size, that those conversations are always welcome. What is not welcome, I will honestly say, is an attempt to tear down the institution of public education. Public education is the cornerstone of democracy. Public education allows everyone to come. We don't ask where someone's from. We don't ask what their abilities are. We don't ask who their parents are. They all get to come. They're all welcome at our doors. We don't have an admissions process other than that you live here, and that's it. And there is certainly, again, I've used this quote before, there's an attempt to divert tax money to other education institutions. Christopher Rufo, is the prime example when he said that wanting universal vouchers means we have to operate from a premise of universal public school distrust. And I will forever be involved in that battle to make sure that public schools are funded and that public schools where every child matters and every child is welcome are as the cornerstone of this amazing place. If you look at the areas where we've gained state and national recognition, right? We heard earlier about the Community Dialogue Project. You can ask Eric Fitzgerald, and he mentioned it earlier. You don't often know how amazing the programs are until you go elsewhere. And Eric has always used the line, when he goes elsewhere, that people say, yeah, of course you do that in Rockingham. That's the land of milk and honey. And that's a true statement. And it's amazing to hear it. And again, that those are all people that know what they're talking about, right? When it comes to our ag education, our CTE programs, MTC, and all our other efforts, national recognition for mental behavioral health efforts. So these efforts need to continue. Larry, congratulations. I really do honestly want to congratulate on your appointment. I hope that the community will continue to support your efforts to work for all students. All students means all. We're not here for just most students. We're here for all students. And I know that you will bring that to the table. And it's just important to know, right? You ask around, the vast majority of parents are quite happy with the quality of their child's school. It is just at a more generic sense that sometimes the criticism comes. But if most parents like their child's school, you know that schools are pretty good, right? And always room for improvement. Thank you to Ms. Shiflett, Ms. Reed, Ms. Lohr, Mr. Falk, Dr. McQuilkin, and to Dan for trusting me with this task. And thank you to all the parents, staff, administrators, and teachers for, again, working together. Mr. Breeden, thank you for your friendship and for being in the arena with us. I will never forget that. It's an honor to share the occasion of our last public school board meeting with you. I will miss the daily conversations about what's working and what we can do better. I've met some of the most amazing people in these last 28 years, and for that, I will be forever grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Scheichel. You will be missed. Mr. Breeden.
I was just sitting here thinking, I had not planned to say this, but we've shared a lot of jokes about the Earp brothers over the years and Wyatt Earp movies, and I was just sitting here thinking about a line from the Kevin Costner version where Doc Holliday says, "I know it's not easy being my friend, but I'll be there when you need me." And that's true for both of you. I have contemplated, prayed about for weeks what might be my final statement here. If you've ever considered what it would be like to be a dying person and know that these were going to be the last words that you would leave to your fellow man, it's not quite that serious, but as a school board member, I am a dying man. And these will be my last words from this podium. So I had two options. One was to simply say thank you for all the good times and all the hard work. The other was something different, and it's more in line with what I've done for 23 years and 6 months, and that's to fight for what I think is best for kids. So I will go down rocking, or I won't go down at all. I am pleased to say that as I travel around this county and I look at all of the accomplishments that have taken place over the last 24 years, my heart swells with pride. I can walk into each of our buildings and look at something and think, I had a small part in that. I see kids that I've helped to mentor who have gone on to be successful participants in our community. We have faced every challenge that's come along, from SOLs, when everybody said that technical education will not survive SOLs, we doubled down and built Massanutten Technical Center to be stronger and better than it was, and still managed to gain full accreditation under those standards. We have dealt with redistrictings, painful as they are, recognizing that we had to be good stewards of the taxpayers' money. And we've done that by being transparent, by meeting with communities, sometimes heated discussions. But we built in clauses that allowed folks to make the move less painful. And I can remember going to VSBA conferences and people saying, "You did what?" by allowing those grandfather clauses, as we called them. We instituted a one-to-one digital conversion project, totally funded by local taxpayer money with the help of the Board of Supervisors. We've kept up with our capital needs projects, and I would submit have the most durable, beautiful buildings in the state of Virginia, and built at the lowest cost per square foot on most every one. We have dealt with the unimaginable, and that is the pandemic that totally upended everything that we were doing, but we were in a better place because of that digital initiative that allowed students to have computers at home to do their work. Was it optimum? No. And we lost ground. And we should have been, over the last year and a half, working and concentrating solely on making up that ground that was lost during the pandemic. But instead, we have been dealing with social issues that many times were founded in falsehood or were outside the purview of a local school board to deal with. Now, why would we have to do that? Because public education across this nation is under attack. And the battleground has come to Rockingham County. I have sat and watched our superintendent be talked to and ridiculed in a way that is totally unacceptable. And Oscar, I'm sorry you've had to deal with that. I have seen staff members or know of staff members who have been pointed out in public meeting or on social media who have received threats, who have had disgusting things deposited in their lawns. I have been accused myself of wanting to indoctrinate our children. Ladies and gentlemen, I have spent 23 and a half years trying to give our kids choice, because the one thing the Creator gave to us as human beings above all other species is the ability to rationally and critically think. And those who would limit access to choice and different alternatives, They are the ones who would indoctrinate our children, not those who advocate for choice. Do we have a responsibility? Absolutely we do. But parents have a right to know that I hear so often that they have a responsibility as well to know what your kids are up to. I understand if you're concerned about a book that has the F word in it, but how do you explain Let's Go Brandon? How do you explain signs that say F Joe Biden? I've sat and talked to a school librarian who wept because she said, I'm just trying to do my job, but I live in fear of my job every day. Folks, that's unacceptable. People should not have that fear when they go to work. Now, you start throwing all those things out there to discredit public education, and why would that be? It would be because, as Dr. Scheichel just alluded to, underneath all of this is the desire to take public funding away from public schools and provide it to private and religious schools. Now, if you don't believe me, do the research. There are people who are seeking to be leaders of our division who are endorsing the ideology and positions of groups that have been labeled as extremist groups whose sole mission is to discredit public education. There's already talk, if you dig down into the weeds of the debate, about using local taxpayer money to fund vouchers. Consider that. Consider with the difficulty that we have recruiting teachers and finding bus drivers and the competitive salaries we're dealing with, talking about taking away funding from our public schools. Do we have room for improvement? Yes, we do. And I will say and acknowledge that through the course of this debate, yes, I've been combative. But I made a commitment several months ago that I was going to be one who stood face to face, toe to toe with those who would seek to harm public education. And sometimes it's taken combative language, unfortunately. Now, the part about all of this that troubles me even more than the political side or the things I've discussed earlier is that so much of this is being done under the guise of God wants us to do it. God's telling me to do it. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I respect my Jewish, my Islamic neighbors, so I'm not trying to say anything to you to discredit your faith, but I will speak to the faith that I have. Don't take what you've seen presented as the way Jesus Christ really is. Don't take my word for it. Open the New Testament. If you read nothing else, read the first 4 books. He tells us what it takes. When asked what are the 2 most important commandments, love God and love your neighbor as yourself. But there's a catch there. You've got to love yourself, not in a narcissistic way, but you've got to be comfortable with who you are before you can love other people who are comfortable as they are. Now, I had a young man, not a young man anymore, but a man come to see me, and it has spilled over into some of our local churches. I had a gentleman come to see me who wanted to talk about the pronoun issue. And I'm willing to have a conversation with anyone, but a conversation is not one where one side has to accept the other side's position explicitly. And that man said to me, I know what Jesus would do. Jesus would whip those kids. And my heart broke. My heart broke. Can anybody who has read those 4 Gospels imagine Jesus whipping a kid? Folks, we've got some challenges ahead of us. I'm telling you that if you do not have a relationship with Jesus Christ, don't look at what you're seeing being represented as the correct way. I don't like the slogan, "What would Jesus do?" The Pharisees tried to say what he would do all the time, only to be confounded by what he did. I'd rather say, "What did Jesus do?" Go read it. And I think you're going to see someone who talked mostly about love and compassion and forgiveness and getting along with one another. I don't know what the future of Rockingham County Public Schools hold. I don't know what the future of public schools hold. Some have asked me, well, Dan, if you're that concerned about it, why don't you hang around for a while? And I considered it. But I'm at an age where I have some personal health issues. And I have family members who have more serious health issues than I. And they need me more right now. But I'm not going away. I have spent all these years in the arena, Dr. Scheichel. I've said the easiest job, the hardest job in the world is to be the batter standing in the batter's box facing a 100-mile-an-hour fastball. The easiest job in the world is to be the guy standing behind the batter's cage yelling, "Swing." Well, I'm going to be that guy yelling, "Swing." And I intend to continue to advocate for what I think is best for all kids of Rockingham County and for the taxpayers. I pray God's blessings upon each and every one of you, particularly Dr. Shiflett, as he takes over this awesome responsibility for the board, whatever makeup it might be. And I'm thankful to the citizens of District 5 who have decided on 6 different occasions, starting at 33 years of age, that this old guy was okay to do the job for him. So Karina, dust off the rocking chair and tell Tegan, Oakland, and Hudson, Granddad's coming home.
Thank you, Dan. Members, we've taken care of all of our business, and we did closed session already so that we could have time now for you all to come up and congratulate our retirees. And on that, I adjourn this meeting. Thank you all for your service, and have a safe trip home and a safe trip to Austria.
Yeah.